This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megafoon Rugby.
Welcome back to this Lekker Rugby Pod episode. And, when people say back by popular demand, and this time we mean back by popular demand, our friend Martin Devlin, he shakes his head modestly over there, but really, Martin, welcome back, man. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much. I love coming on this podcast, and I'm very grateful for all the people who write very nice comments afterwards. So here we go again, boys. Lovely to see you both. Lovely to see you, Harry.
Yeah, how's it, Marty? I love the banter that always goes on between Kiwi and Safa. In this case, Marty and I kind of give us banter back and forth on who's more romantic, who's doing more flowers, who's doing more date ideas. This is what old men do when they're in love. Marty, I'm just going to tell you, man, you make me be a better man. You push me in rugby and also in life. And you're right about the comments. Oh, my God. Read those comments at your peril. You have to have a thick skin, Mbia.
Yeah, well, Harry went out this weekend and bought a new car for his madam or his missus. Love, true love and all
Lord,
that.
I can't compete. You're killing us here, man.
No, I'm telling you. The only positive thing about that is I said it was a light blue car because Harry's now been indoctrinated as a bull, but, I've been getting so much flack about that. So there you go.
Yeah, the only thing I'll raise a flag at here is, the petrol prices are going to go through the roof for the next 2 years, okay? So just keep that in mind, Harry. I
fear that was an electric car, Harry.
Nah, I haven't done it yet. Next one. My next one. I'll go silent. I like the growl of the engine, Marty. I like to stomp it. Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Harry, get going with the coaches, man. Let's talk business.
All right, so let's talk about the conundrum that Kiwis find themselves in. The All Blacks still without a CEO, HR, chief commercial officer, and a coach. And as we know in today's game, it's not just one coach. You have to have a team of coaches. So the fear on this side of the Indian Ocean is that you guys are behind because we want the greatest rivalry to be spicy and good. At this point, we're just worried about it. Do you think you're going to have a coach soon? A, and B, do you have a good idea who it will be?
Question one, yes. Question two, yeah. Look, the longer this goes on, and it's a bit like being in the jury room, isn't it? The longer you're in the jury room, they say, there's a better chance that whoever it is going to get off. The longer that this goes on, I think more of us are leaning now towards Dave Rennie as opposed to the slam dunk that it was Jamie Joseph when the news first came out that Scott Robertson was sacked from the job. And, the reason that a lot of us were thinking Jamie Joseph was just because he was in front of us. When you get appointed to be, and I'll never call it the All Blacks 15, the New Zealand 15 coach, which is the coach in waiting. And at the time, I thought when that appointment was made, and I was very vocal about it, that was a shot across Razor's bow, which was simply saying, if you don't win the World Cup next year, then this guy's ready to go. And Jamie Joseph had previous international experience with Japan, had got them through to quarterfinals of a World Cup in 2019. We know all of this is back in the country. He's easily available. He's also overseeing a bunch of players who could be the players that are next making the jump up into the All Blacks. It just seemed like all of those boxes were being ticked. And then the way the process has been played since then is that, apparently the members of the selection panel have gone down, spent time with him. They've gone up, they've spent time with Dave Rennie in Japan. You probably read all this. And now apparently face-to-face interviews this week. And then a decision will be made that'll be put to the board. They ratify that decision. And then from there it gets, just get the hell on with it. I mean, how long does it bloody take? 7 weeks it's been now. And it is frustrating. And I know that, yes, it's got to be done in a certain way and all of these things. But look, last week, your coach, Rassie Erasmus, the high priest of world rugby coaching, has announced an alignment camp, or the first of the year, something like 70 players, 49 on the ground and 21 overseas. Look, we're not just behind the 8 ball at the moment, and this is the biggest concern, I think, for a lot of us All Black fans, is we're behind the 8 ball in terms of the strength of the two teams, and none of us are arguing that, and it'd be folly to argue that. Look, we split at 1-1 last year, but what we saw in the second half in Wellington, and from that point on, what the Springboks did is just a level above every other team in the world. So we're behind in that, which basically means that we are starting not on the track, we're starting on the grass, and we've got to get a squad of players up to that level before we get to your place at the end of the year. I also worry now that we are behind in preparation, because once this coach gets selected, guys, it's not just about great person in place. Then we were told when Scott Robertson got the sack that person then selects their assistants. So questions asked, how does that process unfold from this point on? Does that person already have names in mind? Because previously, to become the All Black coach, you actually had to bring those people with you and stand in front of the committee and say there's. So there are people in place already, as we know, in All Black camp. None of the assistants have lost their jobs yet. Does the new coach want those guys or girls? If he does want those guys, well, then that I suppose expedites the process. But if he doesn't, then once again, we go back to ground zero. Names have got to be produced, and then these people have to be got out of the jobs that they've already got, because it's not like there's just a big pool of assistant coaches waiting over there having a quiet swim and then lounging on the sun deck until they get the call. In the meantime, our greatest rivals, as we head to this tour, have got alignment camps in place at the moment. And I thought that was a good flex from Rassie. And I don't know whether it's psychological from him, but I believe it is psychological from him, because everything is psychological from him. And when you're sitting in that chair and you have that much power, you can. And I'm sure he's smiling to himself going, New Zealand, we're already planning this, and this. You haven't even got to the stage where you can plan that. So, yeah, you unpack all of that. And we are sitting here twiddling our thumbs, waiting and starting to get really impatient, even though we're told to be patient. It's not the world that we live in, patience, is it? We've seen that recently of what's been going on, in the Middle East. There is no patience in the world. People want action. They want it now. And we're feeling like that right here.
It's interesting because when you do the comparisons and you really run Dave Rennie, Jamie Joseph through all these different, factors and criteria, they are really different cats. At first blush, you say, no, they're kind of the same fella. They're tough, hard guys, got a good track record in club. They obviously well known. We know these guys, right? We can dissect it. But they play different rugby. Their teams play different kind of rugby. And like you say, you'd have to you pick different people. Not both guys probably wouldn't pick a running game, Damien McKenzie. Jamie Joseph, more pragmatic. He's an exit by kick. He's a low penalty, low offload, stern guy, test experience, but at Japan level. Dave Rennie, Wallabies told us, carry and clean, have a go, high penalty, physical as hell, but a family guy, a guy who works with players really well, and they get to know him. Even the Wallabies now love the guy and say he shouldn't have been fired, because losing to Italy sounded like the cardinal sin. Now we wouldn't say that. And if you are selecting this guy primarily for a quarterfinal in Australia to beat the Boks, Dave Rennie found a way to beat the Boks with less talent than the Wallabies, 3 out of 4. I know they were all in Australia, but still. So I think you can make a case for both guys, no? I mean, it's not that simple, but at the same time, I hear your point. You just got to pick one of the guys. Just go, dude.
Yeah. So look, and let's also, and no disrespect to either man, in a perfect world, in a perfect situation, would either of these guys actually be in the conversation? Because we painted ourselves into a corner here by sacking Scott Robertson and not having a ready-made replacement, when all of us thought surely they had somebody in mind. And then they established the criteria. You've got to be a New Zealander. You've got to have international coaching experience. You've got to be available now. So that doesn't mean that the best coach out there is going to be the All Black coach. We are selecting from the best that are available under the criteria at this particular point in time. Let's also not forget, gentlemen, that you've had Joe Schmidt and Dave Rennie and Robbie Deans have all had a go with Australia. They're all great coaches. They all have got all their credentials are in place, all their records you can have a look at. None of them succeeded there. Does that mean that they're all bad coaches? You've got Jamie Joseph, who his personal standing, I think, is probably elevated above his coaching record, given the fact that what has he actually won? He's won a title with the Highlanders, and he's performed admirably with Japan. So that's what we've got in front of us. We're not actually saying, you've won a Six Nations title. You've gone to South Africa and won a series. You've won rugby championships. You've coached a team that's been at number 1 in the world for a certain amount of time. Wouldn't, those be amongst the I suppose, the KPIs that you'd be looking at before you hired any coach? And we don't have that. So, we're going to be sitting here with a guy that we expect to be the guy, when in actual fact, if we were being honest with ourselves, would any of the current candidates actually be in the running if it was down to 2 or 3, if we were selecting everyone that we could possibly think of that we would like to select? Don't know.
And will either of these guys, if they get the job, be able to have the kind of power, autonomy that they want, or they come in sort of with their wings clipped? You know what I'm saying? Like, Rassie gets what he wants. Borthwick has what he wants. Farrell has what he wants. But you're hiring a new guy, you would probably have a lot of guardrails around it, no?
Great question, and I think it's a very fair question. And while you're asking that, I was just going back to when was the last time that was actually the case in New Zealand rugby? I would say that John Mitchell was given carte blanche license back when he became the coach in 2000, at the end of 2001. That didn't work at all. And in actual fact, the All Black kind of train wobbled and wobbled. Mitch is a different guy now, and I got a lot of time for him, and he's created a hugely successful career for himself. I think Scott Robertson was probably given too much rope as well after Ian Foster. That Mark Robinson, the CEO, the board of New Zealand Rugby was so desperate to get this guy in. He's Instagram popular, incredible provincial coaching record, got some real charisma about him. He's just got this, he was this thing. He was the new big shiny thing in the shop. And I think that handing him the keys to the car, the garage, the house, and the holiday home where he could select whoever he wanted, just basically swept a broom through the All Blacks, brought in, 17 new people or something. That didn't work either. So I think, really perceptive from you, Haz, and I think that there is going to be something around this person. For a start, they've only got the job till the end of the World Cup. And that's the other thing that we've got to look at as well. Who wants to leave their job now, knowing that we've got a quarterfinal against South Africa in the World Cup? If you don't win that World Cup at the end of 2027, are they going to rubber stamp you for another 2 years or another 4 years to the 2031 World Cup? There's every chance you get shot like a dead horse on the track. And then we start the process again and somebody else comes in. So whoever does get this job gives up what they're doing at the moment, which I suppose is the only, if we're leaning towards Dave Rennie, would be the thing that I would probably raise a question and go, how much money are you getting paid in Japan? How long is your contract in Japan? Is this a slightly poisoned chalice with New Zealand rugby at the moment that you don't have a hell of a lot of time to get this right? And if you don't get it right, then you're gone. So, you're rolling a lot of dice here if you do take this job. Hey, it's one of the greatest jobs there is in world rugby, isn't there? Coaching the All Blacks. It's at the very top of the tree. But also there is a ruthlessness now around David Kirk and the way that he operates that says you don't get any second chances here. And a guy like Dave Rennie, you think about these guys when they lose a job, and I'm interested in you on this, just the psychology of when you lose a job, how long does it take you to rebound from that, get another job, go again, and then also succeed? Do you really want to put yourself in a no-win situation where the only win is you win a World Cup, and if you don't win that, well, then you're out again? And can you ever get another international job after that? So these are the questions I suppose these guys are considering. Or is it just us sitting there going, wow, my dream job has always been coaching the All Blacks. I want to coach the All Blacks. You give me any chance to coach the All Blacks and I'll take that chance now.
No, I think a little while ago we talked in South Africa, South African context, we talked about Back to the Future. And this is an ambulance job at the moment. You know it's going to be short term, like you said, until the end of the World Cup. So without any guardrails or giving the guy too much rope or too little rope, why don't they get someone in who knows the ropes? There's a lot of rumors about Steve Hansen coming back or Ian Foster maybe coming back and something like that. He knows the setup. He knows what's expected of him. He's done it before. He's been to World Cups. Steve Hansen has won World Cups. I mean, isn't he the perfect candidate rather for a short-term solution and then take your time to get someone to replace him after the World Cup maybe?
See, that's not a bad idea either. And there is a position of director of rugby or whatever that position is these days. I call it the Wayne Smith position, somebody who oversees, somebody who provides input but doesn't bear the full responsibility. And that's what I think most of us think, that those names are gearing towards that position. And the name Joe Schmidt keeps coming up. Now, I know that he's already said that he's not going to ditch the Wallabies and he's committed to that. But that's to the end of, this year, I think it is. And I'm not sure, it's still pretty vague about where he sits next year. I think any of those guys that you have mentioned would jump at that job. And look, and here's, this, when and everyone in New Zealand knows everyone, and when you work on this side of the microphone and over a period of 20-something years, you get to have relationships and friendships with some of them. I get on very well, and I'm not just saying this, people here, I get on very well with Sir Steve Hansen and Ian Foster, amongst a couple of others. Message them regularly, and by that I mean every couple of weeks or so in Japan. Just how's it going? We know each other. And when the messages don't come back, that's always a sign. That's always a sign that they won't talk because they can't talk. Every single reporter journo in this place has been after these guys trying to get a comment from them. I just normally, just exchange, how's it going? How's the kids going? How's this happening? Sort of a bit more personal stuff and that. When you aren't getting replies, that's always a sign to me that says something is going on in the background. And especially with Steve Hansen, who plays it pretty close to his chest until he gets a chance where he can actually talk. Haven't heard from the guy probably in the last 6 to 8 weeks, which is really telling. Same as Ian Foster, really telling. And I'm not talking out of school here, but I'm just saying that triggers my mind that says, okay, well, you guys are being talked to, because if you weren't being talked to or you weren't involved in these conversations, you would certainly exchange just a hello or just a comment. And throughout the initial weeks when Scott Robertson got sacked, they were more than happy to exchange views on these different things, providing, of course, that I'm not going to go on air with these things. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to show you the messages and tell you what they said. I mean, I'm not going to break that confidence. But that's just a little tell for me that says, oh, okay, well, maybe there is some truth in the rumor that you are being talked to, if that's the case.
The ones that we know are being talked to, it's fascinating to me because Dave Rennie is more, like the style of play in Test rugby right now, the teams that are doing really well, the French are doing a quick strike power match, sending waves. They have a very athletic locks. It's really it's more of an aerial game. It's highly athletic and it's quick strike. They don't build 100 rucks. Dave Rennie comes from that old school of carry clean, have a go. I think I saw a stat where his teams run, they exit by carry 40% of the time. That's extraordinary. And when he coached the Wallabies, he had that kind of go, and it was, and I think in the end maybe it cost him the job, but he was building something there. So New Zealand has to sort of decide: do we follow the Bach, French, Borthwick, even Ireland kind of going there now? Or do we stay with our roots, have a go, classic All Black rugby? And that might make a decision between Dave Rennie and Jamie Joseph. Jamie Joseph probably a little more pragmatic.
Look, and we're obsessed in this country with the All Black way, and let's play our way. Just use space, look for space, play quickly. I suppose you've also got to look at the players that you've got available, and we don't have the physical power and brutishness of some of the other teams, but we've always prided ourselves on having a really high level of skill, guys that can use the ball, every player being able to do that. Look, I was really impressed when I was watching the French right throughout the Six Nations do exactly as what you're saying, especially those offloads, those really short pass offloads. We saw the All Blacks try and do this last year and just couldn't get it right, kept missing those passes, those little inch passes, I call them, inside ones where you're not even looking for the guy, you just know that he's there. I don't think we're going to go away from the way that we play, because you look at our players and you look at the way that they play Super Rugby. We want to play at pace. We want to attack. We want to try and run you off your feet. At the same time, is that going to work on a tour of South Africa? I'm not so sure about that. I think we've got to be a bit more combative, and we've got to actually probably want to own our set piece a little bit more than what we have been doing, and control a bit more possession and not kick it away as much, not give the opposition as much. At the same time, I've watched All Black sides in the past decide that the best way to do it is to give you the ball and then just swarm up in defence and just lock you in your 22 and then wait for those mistakes as well. So, but look, it's difficult when you look at, the guy like Dave Rennie and the way that he coached Australia, and you look at the cattle that they've got. And I think I put Joe Schmidt in this box as well, is that how good can they be with those players? How good can they be when their depth is only down to here? And this is what I mean when Rassie says he's got 49 and 21, 70 players. And I'm not so sure that he has got 70 players, 5 at every position, but it doesn't matter. And people will argue with me, of course we've got so much strength and depth. Well, have you? Is that fifth guy really going to be a world-beating test player in 4 years' time? Let's just asterisk his name there, mark it with a blue marker and actually see how many test matches he's played in that time. I'm not so sure. But the perception is what he's creating here, and that's the fearful thing for the rest of us. And you look at those guys coaching Australia, they've never had that. They can't even pretend that they've got that. Their game plans have to be restrictive, surely, around the fact that we've only got you. And then if you fall over, we've got you. And if you fall over, we don't have no one. I think that New Zealand, we don't have the depth. We can't claim the same kind of depth that you guys at the moment. But certainly I think that what we were building at the end of last year, the 45 players, is probably one of the most positive things that has come out of Scott Robertson's reign. That we are looking as though we have got a number of players that can play those positions. The problem we've got at the moment is, are they up to the level yet? I mean, sure, you can say, hey, we could pick 6 to 8 loose forwards at the moment, but are they up to the level of going to South Africa and winning test matches over there? That's the bit that I'd argue against at the moment. Not saying that we can't reach that. But I just think, and then I'm trying to add Jamie Joseph into this mix and go, well, you coach Japan. Now, your playing depth is how big compared to Australia's? Is it actually big? Probably not as big as Australia's. So you're really restrictive in the way that you coach that team, and you got them super fit and everything else and really competitive and so forth. But, in terms of their skill set, what they could actually do during a game, surely, you were ring-fenced as well by the fact that you didn't have 70 or 80 players to choose from. So, again, there's no magic wand here, is there? I think both of these guys would probably be looking at the fact that, hey, if I coach the All Blacks, wow, at least I've now got this amount of players that I can actually look at and choose. And that is probably quite exciting for them, that they will finally get the keys to a much faster car, is what I'm trying to say. Because you are restricted. It's just like you aren't in Max Verstappen's car if you're coaching the Wallabies. You're not. That's just all that there is, and that's because of the playing strength. But hang on, with the All Blacks, yeah, you might not have the fastest car, but you've got a car that is really competitive on the grid.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. It's almost like you're hiring an All Black coach to actually rebuild and move forward and in general do well, or are you just saying beat South Africa, learn to beat them on the greatest rivalry tour, and the one off in Baltimore, and then get that quarterfinal? And if that's the case, I look at what's been wrong with the All Blacks, and there's not that much wrong. Let's be honest; they're right there, but it's discipline on attack. So leaking penalties when on attack, which comes down to cleaning, ruck cleaning. Dave Rennie, his teams always give a lot of penalties away. The next one is aerials, catch a high ball, kick a high ball to the right spot, have the right chasers. That's been terrible for the All Blacks for many seasons now.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know which coach is better at that. And then the final one is, I think, confidence, like literally confidence. Just the little 5% that's missing from prior All Black teams is when we play well, we're going to beat you. That, whatever that belief is. And I think both of those guys are pretty good. But the one thing I worry about is discipline with Dave Rennie, because his Wallaby teams were routinely pinged 12, 13, 14 times, and he got lots of cards.
I think up until last year, you could accuse Scott Robertson's All Blacks of the same. Remember, we went through this awful stage where we were playing with 14 men for most test matches, for half an hour of most test matches, really ill discipline. I'm going to say something that's going to upset you. Our sights are set bigger than you. Our sights are set bigger than beating South Africa. They have to be set bigger than that, than just going and winning this rivalry tour. We've got to set our sights on being the most dominant team in the world again. And the way you do that is you don't isolate and separate one opponent or one series and say, hey, winning that is enough, because then you get psychologically into that thing, oh, we've already achieved that. So we just can't look at it and go, hey, let's be competitive, let's go over there, let's win that. We play South Africa, I think, 5 or 6 times, maybe 6 times, I think, before the World Cup quarterfinal. So every game is going to be, the same question is going to be asked. Well, what does this mean for that World Cup? Can we win a World Cup? Can we beat you over there? Oh, we've lost this game, but can we actually improve enough and get you the next time that we play? I think that we've actually got to set our sights on not just that series, but going to Australia and becoming the world champions. And I'm sure that that's what Rassie Erasmus does. He doesn't just look at this and go, okay, I'm going to win this series against New Zealand. He's looking at winning the next World Cup as well. And we've got to get into that mentality. And I think we've got to concentrate more on ourselves. As you say, getting our own game right. When you talk about confidence for the All Blacks, I wonder whether there's an overconfidence there as opposed to a lack of confidence. Sure, we go into our shells when games aren't going well with us, but I think that we've got a bit too much swag for a team that has lost 4 games the previous year, 3 games this year, hasn't put in an 80-minute performance really in the last 12, 18 months, lost 3 times last year and lost in circumstances where each game was worse than the next loss, the way that we played. And yet we, kind of still have this air about ourselves here in New Zealand, where New Zealand Rugby poke it out on social media constantly that this is this world champion team. I mean, that's the image that is actually put out there, where we haven't played like that for a very long time. I think we need to actually perhaps embrace the humbleness that has been the All Black way for a long time. You can think what you like about us, that's what it's always been, but come and take it off us, as opposed to strutting around thinking that we're actually have made it just because we're wearing a black jersey. I call it New Zealand Warriors syndrome in this country. We've got a rugby league team here where a hell of a lot of players get into this headspace. Oh, I've made it to the NRL. I'm playing for the Warriors. We're a one-horse town. The crowds love me. Adulation everywhere I go. I get recognised in the shopping malls. Everyone wants a meme and a selfie and an Instagram photo with me. You done nothing and won nothing, mate. Making the top 8 doesn't mean anything. You've got to win the competition. And that's my message to the All Blacks. And if I was the All Black coach, I'd say, none of you have won anything. What have you won, mate? What? You've won the Bledisloe Cup? Hello? You beat an understrength French team 3-0? You beat England at the end of their season? What else have you won? How many of you have won a World Cup? What, one of you? Two of you, perhaps? Go out there and actually win these trophies first and then start strutting. That'd be my message. And I hope that this is what the coach is thinking. And actually starting to tell a lot of these players as well that you don't have a place in this team yet. You've got to re-earn that place for me. We're not going to throw every senior player out, of course. I mean, that would just be insane, wouldn't it? But I think there's got to be an uncomfortableness that is brought back into this team. An edge that is brought back. You don't own that jersey. You don't own that spot. This other guy can actually steamroll you and zoom past on the outside because he's actually playing better and he's got a better attitude. And I want to bring that back in because I think that there are just elements that have crept into us that I just think that we're a little bit too chest puffy for the fact that we aren't playing that well and we're not actually that consistent. And, the players always talk about this kind of stuff, about how, the custodians of the jersey and they're just doing it for another generation and they're leaving it in a better place. Well, go out there, mate, and leave it in a better place then. Because at the moment, it's in a stink place, mate.
No, I like it. I love it when you do this, when you get
Sorry,
excited.
Mate,
no, I like it. I love it.
all of a sudden, I'm on the terraces again and Harry's yelling at me in a Springbok jersey and I'm turning around and I'm giving it some of that. Apologies.
I didn't see which finger you were using there, but good. I wanted to just move on quickly because otherwise we'll talk about the coaches all night long. You mentioned the Australian cattle, and I like that term a little bit. And Australia trying to imitate rugby league because that's what they're up against. Nobody else in the world's really up against rugby league, except maybe New Zealand to a degree. This thing in Paris, in London, the shape of the game thing. How much of that, those suggestions about speeding up the game and depowering the scrum and everything, how much of that is down to New Zealand as well? Because we're being accused of sort of brushing you in Australia with the same paintbrush, but it's apparently not really true. What's the story there? What's New Zealand's approach to these new fangled ideas?
Well, what the administration's approach might be different from what us old-time fans think, as opposed to what might be different from the Instagram fan crowd. Look, a lot of sport these days is watched on the phone in highlight reels. And I'll relate a basketball story because I think this is really relevant in just terms of how to explain it. And I watched a thing the other day where Larry Bird was talking about Michael Jordan and just laughing at the fact that he's seen conversations and chats amongst so-called new NBA fans about, Jordan couldn't play in the league these days. And he says, the tragedy about this is, he said, this is a discussion from people who watch their sport in 2-minute grabs. And he said, unless you've sat down and you've watched those games from that era and you understand how it was played, who was playing, who he was up against, the defensive rules and everything else, he said, you can't even comment about it. And I think that when it comes to rugby, that this whole speeding the game up thing is for who and for what exactly? Is it for an R360 crowd who are going to be watching that and then they're going to switch their minds over to the next golf thing over there and then the next whatever is over here? I mean, how much does rugby really need to change? We see Six Nations games going on at the moment, attritional games that are just hard ass, scrum on scrum and set piece to set piece, and this arm wrestle going on between teams. And to me, it's as glorious as anything that I've ever watched in terms of rugby. We saw tries being scored on the weekend in Super Rugby, end-to-end tries, teams attacking from their own goal line, which might be risky, but by God, when it comes off, you're out of your seat screaming and yelling, aren't you, at a 100-metre movement where forwards and backs are, Murray Mexted calls it, this is the rhythm and flow, this is how beautiful the game actually gets. I wonder, and I worry, M-Dub, and I worry, Has, about the continual tinkering with this. Not everything has to be designed for a TikTok reel. And if you don't understand the game, well, then run away and get into something else, because I believe that the more you change, the more you tinker, and this is just from a fan's point of view, you're actually going to lose the essence of what it is. It's a physical contest between two huge groups of ugly, gnarly men for a piece of pigskin. And, that wrestle for that ball, this is what it has always been, is, to me, the essence of what the sport is about. And from that comes the brutality of it, the collisions of it, but also comes the attrition of it and the tiredness of it. And then as players get tired, then gaps open up and you get these beautiful breaks and the beautiful running in that. But you can't just have a game which is all about that side of it, because if that's the case, go and play touch or go and play sevens, mate. And so I'm with you on this kind of stuff. Why depower the scrum? We just had a game on the weekend. Chiefs versus Crusaders. Chiefs had won their first 2 games. Crusaders were 0-2. The Brumbies had put 50 points on them, just towered them up in Christchurch. They were 14-0 up after 10 minutes, the Chiefs. And then along came the scrum. Fletcher Newell, Tamaiti Williams, George Bell. And the whole contest changed on that. And if you don't understand how that can change, well then I'm sorry, I don't have enough time to educate you about rugby at the moment. But it changed, and you guys know this, and every South African fan watching this knows this, that all of a sudden, you can throw the ball around, you can do chip kicks, and you can do this, and you can do that. But when it comes to that bit of the game, well then all of a sudden the game actually changes. Who in their right mind wants to reduce that aspect of the game? What moron is sitting there at a conference somewhere in Europe telling us that it is better if that's not an essence of the game?
Yeah, it's amazing because, what makes rugby so beautiful is that it mirrors life in so many ways. The complexity of it, the constant cheating, let's be honest. We're always trying to get away with something in rugby.
Yes.
The fact that you are literally imposing your will. Sometimes I will impose my will on you. And it mirrors life's basic truth, which is it's a wrestle in the dark for one knife in the mud with someone else. And that's more like life. That's a rock. That's a mole. And when Australia, and I'm going to say it is Australia, not New Zealand, when Australia tries to blur the line between league and union, they miss a trick, because why would you ever want to compete with someone to be like they are when they're going to always be better at that? It's like, I'm dyeing my hair blonde, but I'm competing with an actual blonde. Okay, you're always going to win the blonde thing. So the league has a very simplistic game pattern. And so why you want to do that? Instead, be yourself. And just like we've talked about before, MV and I, Formula One, UFC, cricket, all the football, they build huge events. It's an all-day event. They're not trying to rush up their game. They're not trying to speed up their game. Tennis is 4 hours. And the fans, they want the 5th set. And, so it's just strange to me that we want to have a 2-hour or less game when you're trying to get people out to the park, spend thousands of bucks to come there and do things. Just stay a while. So I wonder also on Bledisloe, I always imagine New Zealanders just cackling, giggling about it. Australia's best thing to do to change the narrative is to become really good at scrums, incredible at lineouts, and find that chink in the armor. Right now, they're trying to do something that I think you guys are always better at, which is fractured play, run to the races. I just don't see the Wallabies beating you guys anytime soon by playing Kiwi ball.
I can't. I just don't get into this. This hybrid game is what they're talking about. And look, there's a couple of very highly respected rugby league coaches. Ivan Cleary's one of them, who's won 4 championships with Penrith, saying that he's looking forward to a game at the end of the year with the rugby players and the rugby league players to get together and play a hybrid game. I couldn't be less interested. Actually, I am less interested in R360, because to me it's just this contrived load of crap is what it is. It's sport for promotional purpose. I don't care about it. If you want to go and do that, go and do it. Leave me with my rugby. The rugby league model is a fantastic game in its own right. The rugby league scrum is an absolute joke. We all know that. I don't even know why they bother with it now. Why don't you just roll it between your legs and start again? What is the point of actually having it, apart from what you want to do is get all the players, the big boys, together in one bit of the field? Well, in that case, take 5 of them off and start again or something. To make another rule about it. But you can't combine these 2 games and expect to impress upon somebody like me, who's 62 years old now, that this is somehow going to be better than the sport that I have loved and grown up with for the last 50-something years, that I like anyway. So I just think, look, there are way too many people who get paid far too much money to sit around with whiteboards, AI tools, and every week it's kind of like, well, what have you done this week? Oh, okay, well, let's invent another hybrid game and get a few other marketing terms out this side, and just stop it, mate. Run along, jog on. I'm not interested in the slightest about it. And if you ask anyone that pays ticket prices and goes to those Six Nations games, do they want to see that either? Or do they actually want to see what they're watching? And sometimes you do get a dud game. Guess what? You get a dud game at tennis. You get F1 races, which are the most boring things you've ever watched because there's no passing and the guy just... You get 0-0 draws in football where you sit there and you hold your head in the hands and catch the train back to Manchester and wonder why your life is so miserable and why you just spent that money doing that. You get rugby games which are duds. But this is what life is as well, Harry. I agree with you. It throws you these things. Just because a couple of games or this bit of it isn't to your liking doesn't mean, what are you trying to create here? Are you trying to create a 100-meter sprint race with a ball? I mean, I don't get it. I don't get, you've already got sevens, which is the fastest form of the game that you could possibly imagine. So if that's what you're into, and where there's so much space around the field, watch that. But the whole point of this is 15 on 15 is for a reason. League took players out of it to try and create more space for a reason. They're two actually separate games. This is what I like about the AFL in Australia. Bizarre game. Great to watch if you go along live. Don't get me to ever explain it because there are no rules in Aussie rules. But they keep to their lane. They stick to it. They've got a sport that works in Australia and they're not trying to pretend that they're taking over the world or getting global on anything. And they make billions of dollars and everyone gets paid and everyone has fun watching it. So, yeah, look, I'm an old grumpy man when it comes to this stuff, guys, and I don't pretend to be anything else and I'm not going to be anything else. I'm not interested in the Instagram crowd and what they want from sport. I don't care. I'm going to be long gone when they sit around and go, oh, that old grumpy guy, Martin, he was right. This really sucks now and I'm not interested in it. It should go back to being what he was talking about. So, yeah.
Oh, you've got two other...
Minister of Common Sense goes like this. He goes, bang, next. Thank you.
You've got two other grumpy old men here agreeing with you, nodding our heads as you were talking there. Something that
I need to add something. Just remind me before we go. I've got 3 or 4 facts about Super Rugby at the moment, which if I run them by you, you're going to raise your eyebrows and go, "What?" Okay, so just remind me before.
Well, I'm going to ask you about Super Rugby just now because what popped out for me there, you said 100-meter try. Which sounds very exciting, but it sounds like there was no defense example for at all. And we've got a perception in South Africa that Super Rugby is defense optional. Is that true?
No, it's not. And if you watched, for example, across the weekend, some of the matches that took place, the Drua 25, Canes 20 in just slop conditions in Lautoka, where it rained. It was one of those Fiji days where humidity 97%. You imagine Mrs. Harry dealing with you on a day of 97% humidity, Harry. Okay.
You don't want to be around me.
The ball was so slippery as a piece of soap. But I wrote down after that game just the physicality of those collisions and the fact that you couldn't pass the ball around. And so that was that kind of rugby. The Chiefs and the Crusaders, look, a lot of points were scored, but man, that was a tough ass game. You watched that.
That was a good match, Marty. That was a very high caliber match, I'll say.
All Blacks going against All Blacks. MW, there was a great point of that game where Tamati Williams has got Josh Lord, and these are 2 All Blacks teammates, and he's got him by the jersey throat, and they're going at each other about something or other. And I said, it looks to me as though the bouncer at the nightclub has said, I threw you out last night, mate. What are you doing coming back in here? And you could feel that intensity of the niggle of that. The breakout tries, both of them were instigated by the same player, as a matter of fact. It was Leroy Carter, who just happened to beat a tackle and then a heads-up play and just kept running. A real Cheslin Colby kind of thing where, the littlest guy on the field, the quickest guy on the field is looking around him, his eyes are darting, and he's going, I can see that gap and I'm going. There was a beautiful one at the end of the game where he did it again. However, Will Jordan chased him down from 30 metres across the side to get him and tackle him and stop a bonus point. This isn't happening all the time. If this was happening every single game, all 5 games of the round, again, you'd be sitting there going, okay, really? But when it does happen every so often, I go back to that brilliant Barbars try in 73 against the All Blacks, and it's been talked about throughout generations as I was growing up. Wonderful try, end-to-end kind of try. I agree with you. If it was happening all the time, no, you wouldn't like it as much.
Marty, on that one point, that game, Will Jordan, his ability to run at top speed, holding the ball in 2 hands, it baffles me. I don't know how he doesn't lose speed from that, but literally it's one of the things I think that's made Will Jordan's career, because no one knows what he's going to do with the ball next.
Yeah, look, it's and the rugby league talk about it as well. The guy with the ball in both hands has got full control over everything that's going on, because you're looking at his eyes as well as you don't know which way he's going. And so, but I think that athleticism you talked about before, M-Dub, is what attracts me to these kind of movements, is who else is with him. The end-to-end try that the Chiefs scored, Josh Lord played a major part in that. So there's a big lockout there who's loping along the field, but keeping up. And this is the kind of aerobics that we're going to need when we get to the high veld and we get to play you guys as well. We need that. We need that in the last 20 minutes of games, but we also need players that are able to do that, to do what the French are doing at the moment, to get off the floor and run again, to be that second or third guy to that pass time and time again. So there's some aspects to it. You can look at it, and if you don't watch the game, say, oh, there's no defence in that. But I think it's probably more a testament to how fit the players are at the moment and the fact that they are being asked to do a lot of extra things. But I go back to the point that that game was won on the scrum. And so whatever else you say about the Chiefs and the Crusaders, that game was won by Tamati Williams and George Bell and Fletcher Newell up front.
And these new rules that they're experimenting with, I see they're going ahead with them. What was the thinking behind that, do you think? Is it any merit to it?
Yeah, look, part of it, I think, is the main one is probably just the TMO. There's a short arm penalty there where you can't ask for a scrum, okay? So that, and we've seen a couple of those. But the main one is just to keep the TMO out. And the interesting thing about that actually is that a lot of us are sitting there moaning at the end of games going, well, why didn't the TMO come in? You can obviously see that was that decision was wrong. The Highlanders, we've got a little segment on at the moment called Jeff the Ref, where we've got a referee who comes in and looks back at some of these instances, and there's a couple on the weekend where the referee, Nick Berry, was caught on the wrong side of when a try was scored, so he didn't see it touch the grass. He sends it upstairs saying no try, and then so the TMO then, the instructions he's got is it has to be a clear and obvious before he can overturn it. And he didn't overturn that one, which was bloody clear and obvious, you could see. So that's probably the main one, the stop-start nature of it, trying to actually keep the game flowing for the spectators so that you don't get these VAR sit-downs in the middle of games. The rest of it, I think the increase of 50-22 kicks is actually a really good thing for the game. It means that a lot of players who you wouldn't expect to kick the rugby ball are kicking the rugby ball. I mean, we saw, a couple of those on the weekend. But overall, I don't actually think, if you look at the game, that it's that much different from if you were watching the Northern Hemisphere competitions. The weather plays a huge part, guys. At the moment, we had two games on the weekend, a Friday and a Saturday night game here in New Zealand, and it was 7:25, 7:28 p.m. in New Zealand, and there's sunshine across half the field. Now, rugby is different when it's played in sunshine as well, as to when it's played at night and it's in wintry conditions and it's wet. And so, we see this in the club competitions up north. We see it, that the reason that they play so many of the Six Nations games in the afternoon is because of the same reason they used to play rugby in the afternoon here in New Zealand, because when you play it in the winter at 7:30 or 8:30 at night, it changes everything about the game. So I'm not so sure if you look at it that, the differences are that huge. I think in New Zealand, Super Rugby has always prided itself on wanting to use the ball and wanting to run a lot more with the ball. I don't think that attitude has changed, but I'm not so sure it's two completely different sports, if you know what I mean.
Do you guys like that when a referee is unsighted? And instead of just saying, I don't know what happened, TMO, tell me what happened, why say no try? And that's my thinking.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that in that case, Nick Berry, he didn't see it. And so why not say, I'm unsighted, I couldn't see it, what are you looking at? Because, look, there's another one where George Bridge scored a try, excuse me, for the Force against Moana. They awarded the try, the conversion went over, then the replay went up on the big screen, and it was clear that the tackler had got to him in goal. He wasn't looking, and kind of the ball got knocked out of his, and he drops it, and he falls in it, and it is a knock on, but you didn't see it in the first replay. Well, that kind of stuff, the TMO's got to come in, because it's just too clear and obvious, and that's the whole point, clear and obvious. Also, it's there for instances of foul play, but I think what's happened is that until everyone gets used to what their roles are and what they should be doing, you're getting things that aren't being looked at, aren't being referred. There's a couple of instances of foul play where they've gone back after the games and then citations have happened because on the TMO, I think, is a little gun shy at the moment of coming in and doing too much. So the balance isn't quite there yet. I'm going to read you some things about Super Rugby, okay? Yeah. And you tell me about this. So all of this is true. All of this is true. If you know nothing about the Super Rugby competition at the moment and you're a South African fan, you're thinking, okay, right, how tough are New Zealand going to be when they come over here? All this is true. One New Zealand team won over the weekend. Every Australian team that played over the weekend won. The top 2 teams are Australian. 3 of the top 6 teams are Australian. Australia are 3-1 in terms of playing New Zealand teams so far this year. All of those things are true. If you didn't know anything about the competition, would you be worried slightly about where New Zealand rugby is at?
It's like stop the count. Australia's like that's it. And the Waratahs are always champions 3 rounds in, right? So yeah.
And the Brumbies so the Waratahs and the Brumbies are the only 2 unbeaten sides at the moment. But all of those facts are true. And so if you didn't know anything about it after 3 rounds, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, what the hell's happened to New Zealand rugby? Wheels are really falling off, haven't you? So
we will wait a bit. We'll see.
Yeah, just to let you know that, you can read things, but just because you're reading them doesn't mean you're seeing them, if you know what I mean.
Is this the most underdog you guys have ever been? I mean, vis-a-vis our relationship. This, like, to me, All Blacks is almost always favorites. But now it seems like, I think like maybe this is one of those things you're trying to play clever and we're going to, get overconfident.
Well, look, I'll go back through it, a couple of times. And it's, 1998, we lost 5 games in a row when we started Radio Sport that year. 5 games in a row, the All Blacks, 2 to South Africa, 3 to Australia. And that was after an unbeaten season in 1997. We were at a real low ebb then. We bounced back in 99. I think beat you something like 28-0 in Dunedin. I was at that game. I didn't get beaten by France in the semi-final. I think 2009 when you beat us 3 times that year, and we just couldn't find, we just had we lost 5 games, the All Blacks did that year. We couldn't find an answer that year to fielding high kicks. Hello, turn the clock back to the future.
Deja vu all over again.
It was exactly. In 2010, we turned it around a little bit, and I remember. And look, I'm not name dropping or anything, people, but I remember interviewing Richie McCaw at the beginning of 2010 and I'll never forget it, sitting in front of him. And as a fan, I was going, we lost 5 games last year. We lost 3 times to South Africa. What the hell? And he just looked at me and he said, listen, we're playing them again. And he said, we're going to beat them. And he just had this thing in his eyes. He said, they're just another team in front of us. They're just guys in green jerseys. We're going to knock them over like we'll knock everyone else over. And how much of that is significant when it comes to looking ahead at this year and this tour and everything else? Let's not forget that, South Africa lost. You guys lost twice last year. There were moments in other games where you're a little bit scratchy. The end of year effort and the trajectory at the end of the year was just massively impressive. But, there is still 80 minutes, grass, 15 on 15, and a bench, and a funny ball that bounces. We saw it on the weekend. Brilliant chip and chase from Will Jordan. It was just an extraordinary try. And he's running, and I'm not joking, the ball, it's kind of like, a fast bowler that hits a ping of grass, and all of a sudden it rears up over the head of the wicketkeeper. This ball bounced 5 feet over his hands as he's jumping for it. It hadn't bounced that high all game, and it never bounced that high again. Anything can happen. A pedantic referee. Flip-slop conditions like we saw in Fiji. It could be pouring rain. We don't know. You could just go and have a stink of a day. That happens as well sometimes at the office where some of your players just don't play that well. So, I think that we've got to, again, I go back to what I was saying before, look at ourselves, look at who we've got available, look at the things that we've been doing really well, the things that we do well, the players that we have got and the best way to use those players. And actually giving them a rocket up their backsides as well and saying, all of you guys that lost to South Africa, if I was the coach, the first thing that I'd be doing is I'd be going through those defeats. Argentina, South Africa, England. Who were the players that played the last 40 minutes? I want the list of the names of all of the guys that were on the field for those 40 minutes. And then I want to cross-reference the same players that were there through those 3 games. What? Do you guys learn nothing? Because we're pretty similar in the way that we lost those games. I want to start upskilling all of our players. 2 or 3 players in every backline position, and every backline must be able to kick a 50-22 these days. Not just the first 5. What say he gets tangled in this? I want 3 guys that can kick a drop goal in the last minute. I was watching a rugby league game on the weekend, and it was pathetic. It was in golden point time. One team had about 5 goes at it. The other team had 4 goes at it. It was like, you guys are paid professionals. How difficult is it to drop kick from the 22 over the post, for God's sake? This is, I think it comes back essentially to whoever is wearing that jersey. How much do you want it? And I'm not talking about how many Instagram followers you want. How much do you want that win? If you don't know, I'm with Sean Fitzpatrick on this. If you don't know what it means to go to South Africa and win, I don't know whether or not we're going to take you over there. If you don't respect that history, don't understand it, don't want that history, because this isn't about going over there, getting another contract in Japan in 2 years' time, or getting another sponsorship deal, or getting another 10,000 followers on your boof. I don't care about that. How much do you know about what it's like beating the Springboks? How much do you want immortality? How much do you want legendary status? Do you want to be a Richie McCaw? Do you want to sit there and be not a good All Black, but a great All Black? This is if I'm the coach, whoever it is, Jamie Joseph or Dave Rennie, I'm staring at you down the barrel through the eyes. Put your phone down. I want to see what you're saying when you look at me, not what's coming out your mouth. I want to see your eyes. What have you got in there? Is this who you are? Is this what you want? Do you want to go there and beat that team and be an All Black that does that?
This is awesome, man. The greatest rivalry for sure, because, and this is it, like you said, it's the memory of the people who went before you, getting up early or late, watching things you couldn't believe. And it's the greatest rivalry for sure in rugby. There's nothing that's parallel to it. But we had sort of dropped the ball on it. And I think one of Rassie's greatest achievements isn't only just the World Cups and the wins. It's restoring the rivalry to where it should be. And now it's up to you. It's like, okay, serve, held. Now it's up to you. The All Blacks have to do something to do their part as well. And it strikes me that it's not just about X's and O's and about technical analysis. It's going to have to be fire in the belly.
That's what I'm getting from you. Is what it is. Yeah, look, and you know what Rassie has done, and this is what you should be most proud of, South African fans. What he has done, the things that overwhelm us is when I see the pictures after, and we talked about this, Harry, when I saw the pictures after the win in 2019 and then after 2023, what it does to your country, what it does to people in the streets. In 1996, I was down there in Willis Street in Wellington at 5 o'clock in the morning, dancing to myself in the middle of the street after beating South Africa, and a couple of other people came out of their houses and apartments, and Sean Fitzpatrick was sitting in this chair a couple of weeks ago, laughing and saying, by yourself. I said, I don't care if it's by myself. That's what it meant to me. This is what I want the players. Is you've got Rassie has created a selfless squad, a squad that actually genuinely believes that this is more important than all of that. That this is more important than everything else. That guy next to me is more important than I am, and I've got to protect him and look after him and win this game for him. And if I get dragged off, it's not about me. It's actually about him and him and him, and it's about you. If you can't stoke that fire. And if you don't believe in this kind of stuff, well, then I don't believe you can go there and win, because this is what you talk about, Harry, the missing 5% in the confidence. This is where that comes from. This is the intangible. And it's like every single thing that you do. It's like what life is. You can sit there and you can be the best husband because you provide this, you provide this. But if you don't genuinely notice her, and you don't genuinely look at her and see that new hair and see that bum wiggle as she walks down in her track pants to make you a cup of tea, and you go, "Oh, darling, look at you." If you don't feel that, then you aren't going to go to that level where she is devoted to you as much as you want her to be in everything else. Am I wrong on this? I believe the human aspect is the one aspect that you can't quantify. And it is the one aspect that whoever out of these coaches has got to connect. Because we've got this disconnect going on, apparently. You can't have a fractious team. You can't have a team that's got a cup of tea club. You can't have that kind of stuff. And I'm sure Rassie doesn't allow this. He's the chief priest, Rassie. You bow to that guy, but everything else has got to be bigger than you, doesn't it? Has to be.
No, that's his thing. Stress is not what what we're feeling when you're running onto the field. Stress is not having food on your table. That's the kind of thing. That's what he was getting at, and that's what built this team to what it is. I'm going to just move on quickly, talk to you about the relationship between South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia. In Sanzar specifically, South Africa now teaming up with France, apparently taking 3 months of planning and everything else, and Rassie launching a podcast and the whole shebang. Are things a little frosty now with our New Zealand, Australian counterparts in Sanzar, or is it just business as usual?
And how sad is that? How sad is that? It was us against them. It was our hemisphere against them, wasn't it? And there's always something really special about that as much as we bit and fought and scratched each other on the field, that we were together. And we've got an Anzac thing going on. I go back to the Commonwealth Wars and the World Wars where we were, seconded by Mother England, and all of us went and when I say we, of course, our ancestors and our past relations went together and so forth. And these things bonded us. And in terms of rugby, we were bonded because we didn't have the riches up there. They didn't really want to know us up there. They ran the game, they changed the rules and everything. But you know what we always had? We could kick your ass every time we played. Or not every time, but just about every time we played. This really does sadden me. And I don't know if it's the destruction of the relationship, but it's the thinking that it is of less importance. We should be absolutely aligned down this part of the world. The Pacific, Argentina, Japan, us, you guys, Australia. it's good to have two different hemispheres with two different ideals, two different ways of playing, two different attitudes, two different everything. And then we come together at World Cup time, or what this new Nations Championship, I suppose, I know it's contrived, but they're going to try and do this as well, where we come together and it is, world against world, bit of this, your bit against our bit. I just hope, I don't know. I mean, I look at our administrators and I just think, over the last 20 or 30 years, none of you seem to have any impact at all at World Rugby. You should know all of these guys. They should be down doing fishing trips at Lake Taupo. You should have their number on speed dial. You should know where their kids are at university. And every time you're in a different city, you pop in and say hello and have a coffee and meet them for a present. We've got to have presents. You've got to walk into that room and everyone wants to come up to you and shake your hand. Do we have administrators like that in New Zealand? Do they have them in Australia? We've got a lot of guys that get fat, get rich, have a great time doing these jobs. But, the only way to get anything done is you've got to cozy up to those up north. And obviously the French wield enormous power these days. I can understand why it's happening, but I don't like it. And, we can't isolate ourselves any further than we are already. We've already chopped you off at the knees by saying, we don't want you in our competitions, which is just ridiculous. And all of us here in New Zealand, genuine rugby fans, are pained by this. As much as we talk about the rivalry is one of these kind of rivalries, is what it is, isn't it? It's, you might be punching each other in the face for 80 minutes, but afterwards it's the arm around the shoulder and I want to scrum you, Fitzpatrick. That's what the rivalry is.
Absolutely.
So on an administrative level, I just think it's nonsense. I mean, I can understand why you might go that way, but why aren't we feathering that nest? I don't get it.
No.
I think it's interesting because I think in the end, this rivalry series they're doing, and the word contrived comes up as well there, I think there's enough genuine rivalry behind it that will do something to the relationship. It'll spike it. I think it just will create new stories. Young New Zealanders will grow up thinking, I want to be on that tour. And there's not something legendary. I've seen a number of All Blacks coming out in the final in these 2 weeks saying exactly that. Like, oh, I wish I was still playing. I wish I was going there. That just sounds like a great time. Justin Marshall, I think, was saying that, like, what I would give to do that again. And I think that's important in young All Blacks career to be in scrums and mauls and melees with Safa youngsters, because it's done nothing like that. Highveld, some farmer's son, Burki, he's going to come give you a real examination. I cannot wait for it. So I'll be there for the whole thing. Marty, I hope you're coming over.
Yeah, we're coming for the 3 tests. Yeah, look, never been in. It's just something that I've wanted to do my whole life. But I wanted to do it watching the All Blacks, because that's how I grew up with South Africa, was the rugby, obviously. The politics all became entwined and everything else. And I'm free to admit I was out there on the streets and screaming and yelling to stop this tour, but then I'd go and watch the games in secret around at another mate's place because I love the rugby so much. But to come and to watch the rugby there. And look, that's what I'm getting back to. And when, the privilege you get in this job of having Sean Fitzpatrick sitting there, being able to talk to guys like Justin and Jeff Wilson and see in their eyes what it means to them now that they think about 30 years ago. And again, if our players these days can't buy into that and don't understand it and won't understand it. And it was really sad to me, interviewing some players before the Grand Slam tour, where, we're putting to them 1978 was the first time that we did it, and hearing from them and say, oh, I don't know about that. Well, why don't you go and find out? Why isn't your curiosity piqued about that? You're just going to sit there this afternoon, doom scrolling through your goddamn phone. Why don't you want to find out who the first All Black captain was that led us on that tour, and what it means to those players? Because that's what you keep talking to us about all the time, the legacy of the jersey. But, that doesn't mean anything unless you actually believe in that yourself. Go and spend a couple of hours researching. Go and ring up one of those guys. Get one of them on the phone. Get Ian Jones on the phone and talk to him about what it meant in South Africa. And if that doesn't inspire you, well, nothing will. But that's what the only thing we have is the silver fern. That's the only thing we have to inspire us. Every other country is richer, more players and everything else. If you lose that bit, you don't reel that fish back in. It's gone. It's off the hook forever. And so this is the intangible bit. And I plead, to the players in New Zealand rugby at the moment. And David Kirk, he is a great man with a lot of brains, a lot of strategy. But this is something that you just that you have to absolutely and utterly burn from inside about. And somehow you have to find that in every one of these young men that are going to go over there, that is more important to them than anything else, that they want to be legends of the game, that they want to have their team and their squad talked about like those guys. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just too old and maybe I've missed the boat on this and maybe the generations have just raced past me and they don't care about this stuff anymore. But I follow a lot of sports where it still does count, and to me, though that is the quintessential element that without that, there is nothing. And this is what Rassie has tapped into, and he's tapped into the psyche of you guys as well to make you believe it as well, that Springbok jersey means absolutely everything, bigger than everyone else. But collectively, wow, what a trip that is. How good does that feel putting that thing on at the moment and walking around the streets of your country? I bet everyone is wearing a Springbok jersey. And when did you feel like that the last time? And what does that do to you as a person and just walking down having a coffee, the smile that you have as soon as you see another one walking down the street? What does that do for your day? Is this something that is just airy-fairy or is this something that is real? Argue with me and tell me it's not real. I will stand here and fight to the death and tell you it's real.
Man, I'm pumped, MV. I have a dream. We're gonna have an event in a Hatfield brew pub or somewhere in Newlands. We're gonna get into a nice garden brewery, and let's get Marty and I up on stage, and we just throw some red meat in the middle and go, man. Yeah. Just have some real old-fashioned banter. Get a crowd together. Let's do it.
We'll sell it out. It'll be a sellout. I'll probably get you organized at Loftus.
I might be able to win the line out. I won't win the scrum. I'll tell you that.
Man, as long as you enjoy the Braaivleis, we're all happy, man. Braaivleis, Brandewyn and Coke, and then you're happy. Then you're honorary South African. We sort of recruit you, not the word, Harry, what's quick in English? No, when we breed them. I don't know if that's the right word. When we create them.
Convert.
No, when you create a plant, that's what we're doing. Yeah, we're putting
germinating.
Honorary South Africans, and you're fast on the way to becoming one. So thank you for that, Harry. You can take us home.
All right, cheers, man. Marty, so great to have you on. Listen, as long as you're there, I think New Zealand has plenty of drive and hope. And all I would say is they're going to hire you as the honorary chaplain, the chaplain of spirit. Just get you in the mix, man.
Main motivator.
Okay, boys. So we're looking at sometime this week, supposedly the decision. And I've been telling you this, and I know they've been saying next week. But next week is what we're hearing is when it may happen this week. But more than likely, it's going to be early next week on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And so anything that you need on that particular day, just yell out. We'll be going live as soon as we know.
Okay, predict. Jamie or Rennie?
Rennie.
All right.
I didn't even hesitate, did I?
No.
Nice. Thanks, man.
That's interesting. Okay, awesome. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. It was awesome as usual. Cheers, man.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megafoon Rugby.